part of its 2021 Historic Preservation Symposium, the Jefferson County Historical Commission is pleased to present this video called A History of Special Education in Jefferson County, presented by Kelly Cvanciger. This presentation focuses on elevating and increasing awareness of our county's marginalized children. Uncovering a checkered past, Kelly details the storied history of special education in Jefferson County from 1910 through 2020. Tying federal legislative mandates to education, Jeffco's journey from isolation to acceptance of children with developmental disabilities provides insights into the field of special education. Kelly Cvanciger is an educator at Bear Creek High School, where she has taught in the Social Studies Department for 20 years. Kelly also serves as a Jefferson County Historical Commission member, as a City of Lakewood Historical Commission member, as a National History Day board member, and a Jeffco Schools ASD Strategic Community member. A proud mom of a 9-year-old little boy and wife to an Iraq-Afghanistan war veteran, Kelly spends her free time advocating for ASD awareness in the community while continuing her pursuit to uncover Jefferson County history.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Cvanciger, and I'm a member of the Jefferson County Historical Commission. Today, I would like to present to you the history of special education in Jefferson County. But first, I'd like to leave you with this note. When researching issues in education, oftentimes historians encounter terms used in the context of an earlier time period, which might be considered offensive today. This video reflects the usage of historically accurate terms. However, I do not agree with how the terms were used to represent marginalized people. In the early 1900s, many physicians strongly recommended that parents institutionalize their children once a disability was diagnosed. Suspecting parents were advised not to foster a relationship with their child that might be institutionalized later as an adult. Jefferson County was home to the Colorado State Home and Training School for Mental Defectives. Due to the school's geographic location, locals and families referred to it as the Ridge. Students who were categorized as dependents with profound mental retardation spent their lives in residence at the institution. With over 300 residents and a growing waiting list due to the post-World War II population boom, the Ridge faced staffing shortages and funding dilemmas while conditions deteriorated, often becoming harsh and overcrowded. By 1940, the outlook towards developmental, behavioral, and physical disabilities shifted. Parents started to reflect on raising their child in a home care environment. Community support increased for special education services at neighborhood schools. Before R1 consolidation, children with disabilities were placed in government-sponsored facilities like the Ridge, or resided in residence homes run by religious entities. By 1950, under the guidance of Fletcher Miller, a reorganized and consolidated entity known as Jefferson County Public Schools R1 emerged. Miller, Jeffco's first school superintendent, offered a unique public school option to children countywide. In 1951, Jeffco R1 officially integrated the special education school, known previously as a school for handicapped children, into its jurisdiction run by the Society of Crippled Children and Adults. By 1960, 337 students with disabilities attended segregated special education classes across Jefferson County, receiving the benefit of a public education. As a nation faced a reckoning during the civil rights era of the 1960s, institutionalized facilities declined in favor of more inclusive learning environments. the first adaptation of a school to serve handicapped children began with the remodel of George Iber Elementary School in 1956. As a need for inclusivity arose in community schools, mandates by the Colorado legislature in 1961 required funding for special education. Classes for students in special education were held at numerous primary and secondary level schools, including George Iber Elementary, Vivian Elementary, Lakewood Middle School, Jefferson High School, and Alameda High School. Considered the best special education in the state of Colorado in the 1960s, children who were classified as educable with a disability attended neighborhood schools that had staff resources and curriculum to meet their educational and functional needs. By 1963, confronting multiple challenges across R1, a choice school formed the foundation for special education district-wide. Fletcher Miller School, named after Jeffco's first superintendent, afforded students with multiple mental, physical, and behavioral challenges a place to go to school that sole focus was the education of Jeffco's most vulnerable student population. Modified with wheelchairs and walkers, 20 buses drove children from across the district into the welcoming arms of the staff, specially chosen to meet the needs of students with an individualized education plan. In 1969, Colorado granted $10,000 to integrated students with deafness into their halls, and Fletcher Miller expanded its special education program, reaching even more children countywide. With a vision to provide an individualized approach to meet the needs of the whole child, instruction at Fletcher Miller School turned its focus on developing communication, academic, physical, and social-emotional skills alongside its expanding student population. President Gerald Ford's signing of the Education for All Handicapped Children Act in 1975 provided a new direction for special education nationally, guiding the instruction of special education through federal mandates to force state compliance. The state of Colorado pushed for full funding of special education programs, and the 1975 Act aimed district budgetary spending at 40% for special education when compared to the average cost per pupil district-wide. Focusing on inclusion, Fletcher Miller School served students with complex abilities, from physical handicaps to mild developmental delays. Yet, as more able-bodied students with a cognitive impact enrolled by 1980, neighborhood schools throughout the Jeffco area gained confidence in their ability to successfully instruct students, assuming increased responsibility for their student population with developmental disabilities. The 1990s marked a significant period in transforming special education across the state of Colorado. The 1998 reauthorization and renaming of the Education for All Handicapped Children Act to the Individuals with Disabilities Act, known as IDEA, imposed significant safeguards for students with disabilities in public schools. Throughout the implementation of disability categories, students with specific learning disabilities were placed in a least restrictive environment, ensuring their legal rights in mainstream classrooms. In 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, known today as ADA. Modeled after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the ADA guaranteed equal opportunity and reasonable accommodations for students with a disability seeking to enroll and access their neighborhood public schools. Accessibility requirements, anti-discrimination employment mandates, and public accommodations affected how schools approach special education. However, Many schools across Jeffco struggled to meet the financial demands of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Millions of dollars had to be spent to upgrade infrastructure, which included the building of sloping ramps, elevator access, and guide rails. At the same time, Jeffco saw a resurgence in special education numbers. Fletcher Miller School offered support, absorbing children back to its campus, serving an increasingly larger population in special education. Fletcher Miller was so popular, in fact, they had to add a new wing onto their school. As a choice option for the entirety of Jeffco by the 21st century, Fletcher Miller School blossomed as efficacy grew to meet the demands of diverse students. Offering an integrated preschool program, Fletcher Miller School saw children with an intellectual disability or multiple disabilities transition back as the school reshaped its image to one of service to an underserved population. With early intervention support in place for children under the age of 5, more children received a diagnosis from Child Find, affording them the opportunity to gain special education services. Jeffco schools expanded special education opportunities. The Sobieski Academy was created to provide an individualized educational and therapeutic environment for students. Jeffco schools, following the mandates prevalent in IDEA, used mainstream classrooms to instruct thousands of children diagnosed with an educational disability annually. While students with disabilities entered general education classrooms in increased numbers, the opportunity still exists for students with a disability to enter SSN classrooms, known as sheltered classrooms for students with significant support needs. These classrooms around Jeffco exist in many neighborhood schools to develop the functional and academic levels of students with a disability in an effort to prepare students for post-secondary success and independence. Many organizations exist within the borders of Jefferson County that help Jeffco schools in developing a greater awareness of students with disabilities, assisting in therapeutic services, legal services, and educational services. Educating students diagnosed with a disability has come a long way since the days of the Ridge, as awareness for the unique needs of every individual in our society are elevated, recognized, and respected. Private providers, such as JFK Partners and Therapies of the Rockies, provide speech, physical, and occupational services for children and adults diagnosed with a developmental delay. Therapeutic services for speech and occupational therapy, as well as workforce readiness programs, are offered by DDRC, a nonprofit organization that promotes early childhood intervention to improve educational outcomes. The ARC promotes and protects the human rights of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and actively supports their full inclusion and participation in the community throughout their lifetime. Disability-specific organizations such as the Rocky Mountain Down Syndrome Association and the Autism Society of Colorado advocate for the educational and societal inclusion of children and adults with their respective disability. While the Colorado Department of Education sets the standards for educational attainment for all students in the state, these organizations fill a gap community-wide to support inclusion and acceptance of all students with a disability, improving outcomes. Now, parents are equipped with tools to facilitate stronger relationships between schools, therapeutic centers, and their children with disabilities. Increased awareness and access to a fair and equal education is the primary goal of our democratic nation. Learning from past injustices and an effort to secure an education for all. Thank you.